Hi, David. How are you? And first, I need to take this out of my system, but I need to thank you for giving us such a beautiful portrayal of Dr. King on Selma. So again, I need to say thank you for that, and thank you for this incredible project of the Midnight Sky.
Thank
Let
you.
me first thank you. Let me start by asking you. This movie is it's all about the feeling of isolation and how to deal with a new reality. In the case of the astronauts when they arrive on Earth, how would you compare our current reality with the one presented in the film?
Well, it's more comparable than we would like to admit. I mean, it's certainly more comparable than it was when we actually made the film. Who knew that all of humanity would be brought to its knees by a pandemic? And in our film, all of humanity is brought to its knees by, an environmental catastrophe. So, there are real parallels between what we're going through now and what's going on in the film. And so, the film is ultimately a cautionary tale, but it's now more resonant now than it was before.
So thank you for that. So most of the films that takes place in space generally feel, at least to my opinion, feels cold and philosophical. And although this one has the existential topic or theme, it also has a lot of heart, a lot of emotion. To what or to whom do you attribute a good balance between these topics or issues?
Yeah, I mean, George Clooney, who directed it, I think the film actually really symbolizes who he is as a person. He's incredibly human, but he's also a giant movie star. The film is is about existential things, but it's also
Mhm.
about personal things. It's an emotional film, but it's also a sort of fantastical film in terms of its scope, scale, and size. And so, I would really attribute the fact that it works to George, who is someone who in his own life is able to sort of find a way to weave these different parts of himself together.
So talking about George, whose filmography as a director has a lot of political elements, and also he focused on characters. He's such an optimistic guy. So I was working with George in a project that presents the possible end of the planet as we know it, but with a hopeful tone.
Well, one of the things I really love about George, amongst many things, is the fact that he has a great ability to think beyond himself. Not every movie star has that quality.
Mhm.
He is someone who cares about the planet. He cares about human rights. He cares about civil rights. He cares about voting rights. He cares about the environment.
Yeah.
And that is evident in the projects he chooses, the projects he produces, directs, acts in, sees come to fruition. And it's evident in the way he directs people. He's a really caring human person. And I know that the environment and what we are doing to our planet is something that is very much at the top of his mind. And I think that's probably what drew him to this film.
So lastly, let me ask you about your character. Your character has to balance work with the personal responsibility of bringing his team to safety. What was it like that balancing those responsibilities?
Yeah, it was a great thing to play because, he has several responsibilities. He has a responsibility to his team, he has a responsibility to his unborn child, and he has a responsibility, a huge responsibility to the planet. He's been tasked along with his crew with finding a new planet that we can inhabit because we've ruined our own planet. So this is a guy who has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. But George and I talked a lot about the fact that you cannot play leadership, but you can
Hmm.
play humanity. Leadership is
Exactly.
something that the other people around you give you. And the group of actors I was working with very much gave that to me. And what I loved is that it wasn't just playing a sort of a stoic leader, but I got to be a human being in this film as well.
So I have a question. Time for one more question, and tell me about the technical aspects. I love the film. It's impeccable the way George brings the space and the situations going on Earth to the screen. How was working this with the special effects, the sequences where you're flying. So tell me a little bit about how it was working with those effects.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. It was really physically grueling, because when you're in space, you're floating. There's no effort, but there's a lot of effort that goes into making it look like there is no effort. And thankfully, because George has famously done a couple of
Hmm.
space films himself, he was able to lay the table. So it was 3 months of training before we got there, and then a lot of stunt work when we were shooting in London. We had to keep the training going to stay strong so that we looked like we were floating. There were huge technical aspects to it, the visual effects, being explained to how you were going to be upside down and all this kind of, and then there was an emotional component to it as well. So thankfully, it all came together.
All right. Well, David, thank you very much again. Congratulations on such a great film, and again, stay safe wherever you are. So thank you again.
Thank you.